Okay, so thank you all for attending this session of Germany Today, hosted by the Transatlantic Outreach Program. My name is Mallory Bubar. I'm the Education Projects Manager here at TOP. We are a nonprofit organization that offers fully funded study tours for North American educators to travel to Germany during the summer and explore contemporary German culture and society. Additionally, we provide free educational resources on modern Germany, including curriculum materials and professional development sessions such as this one today. So in today's session of Germany Today, we will be hearing from Lena Vogel of ZWEITZEUGEN e.V. If anybody speaks a little bit of German, I love this name because Zeitzeugen is the name for the time witness, and then the zwei, that extra W in there, changes it to second witness. So the German Association ZWEITZEUGEN e.V. has set itself the task of passing on their stories as so-called second witnesses. The association focuses its educational work on children and young people from age 10 and up, who are empowered to do the same. Moreover, they offer programs for teaching staff on working with students, biography-based Holocaust education. In doing so, they encourage teachers to work against anti-Semitism and discrimination using a low-threshold approach that works for diverse target groups. Speaker today is Lena Vogel, who is the head of adult education and international projects and will present the Zeitzeugen approach. Thank you, Lena. I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the introduction and thank you all for joining. I know it's a Friday, end of the week, and I'm really, really happy to share a little bit about our Zweitzeugen approach. Mallory already said a few words about it. I work as the head of adult education. My main job is to work with teaching staff, mostly in Germany, and encourage them to work with our materials. And today I'm going to show you, well, I'll tell you a little bit about what we are working with, how we work with the survivor stories, how we give context to them, what kind of thoughts we put into working with survivor testimonies, and yeah, maybe also show you a little bit of material that you might be able to use yourselves if you like. But first of all, I will share my presentation, and I will start with a little question for you. And if you happen to have questions, there's going to be a Q&A at the end. So I'm going to speak for about 30 minutes. And then we're going to have some time for Q&A. If you have a question in between, feel free to put it in the chat. I will try to have a look at the chat in between. If I don't manage to answer it, there'll be time in the end. And I'm definitely going to come back to it. But yeah, if you already have it in your head, then just put it in the chat. We'll be there. We won't forget it. And I would also like to start with a little question for you. And now I forgot to share my audio as well. No, yeah, that works. Let's see. Okay. I would like to start with a question for you, actually. And if you like, you can answer it in the chat because I'm interested in hearing how you encountered the topic of the Holocaust for the first time. When was the first time you learned about the Holocaust? Maybe which context was it? How old were you? And what was it like for you? Um, I'll give you a minute, and if you could type some words in the chat, that would be great. We're going to take a look at it afterwards. So just take a minute and please answer the question in the chat. Okay, there are already some answers popping up in the chat. Thank you. I'll just wait for some more seconds to see if anybody else would like to answer. Okay, so for everybody who's watching the recording, I'm going to read out some of the answers there because I think the chat is not recorded. We have Mallory stating that she read The Diary of Anne Frank in 8th grade. Sarah said it was in grade 4 or 5, also The Diary of Anne Frank. And yeah, she had difficulties to comprehend how people could be treated the way they were. We have Jenny who said it was in probably middle school in history class at age 13. She felt very sad. Ryan has always been interested in history and he always knew about the Holocaust. And he writes, although that can't possibly be true, I feel like I only really understood the event in my young adult life. Cameron wrote, we read a story about children in Norway or so sledding down snowy hills, but they were secretly transporting gold. I think that's when I first heard of Hitler. And Amanda said that she remembers learning about the Diary of Anne Frank as well in 8th grade, but like better understanding started when she was in 11th grade. So yeah, I think that is quite the same reality in Germany. I'm going to share a little bit, obviously, like what the situation in Germany is like. And I usually ask teachers this question because it's always interesting to know what your own experience is with learning about the Holocaust when you are starting to think about how you are going to teach about it yourself. Um, and yeah, many describe this feeling of being sad, being shocked. And obviously, we in Germany have a connection to the perpetrator side of the history, but more probably than you have in the United States. But what a lot of answers state that teachers from Germany give is that they felt overwhelmed from the topic, or that yeah, they did not really understand the gravity of the topic itself. And when we talk to students, we often hear them saying that the way that the Holocaust is taught, also in Germany, is way too abstract. It's way too complex. It's big numbers, it's huge cruelty, and they don't really know how to deal with the topic, or they are a bit bored because they have already heard so much about it. And that is something that we are working with. So with a ZWEITZEUGEN approach, we work with the topic of the Holocaust, and we would like to make it possible to have a learning experience that actually changes something, that keeps you interested in the topic, that makes you understand yeah, what an important part of history it is, and that makes it, well, somehow that gives the possibility to connect it to today and your own life. And how we do that, I will tell you about that a little bit more later on. Thank you for sharing. I will show you a little video that I brought that might give an impression of the ZWEITZEUGEN work we do.
Es ist schon hart, wenn man das so hört, so von einem Menschen, der so krasse Sachen erlebt hat.
Sie war wahrscheinlich ziemlich verwirrt, aber als man ihr dann gesagt hat, dass sie umziehen, hat sie sich wahrscheinlich keine Sorgen gemacht, weil sie dachte, sie kommt in ein neues Haus.
Finkelgrün wollte diesen Mann, der seinen Großvater umgebracht hat, vor Gericht bringen.
Die Menschen sollen hören,
dass ich als Kind mit toten Kindern gespielt habe.
Es verschwanden Menschen, spurlos. Eva fragte sich, hey, wo sind die Menschen hin? Die Antwort, die sind mit dem Zug weg.
Eva sagt immer, wir sind ihre Zeitzeugen. Ich glaube, sie möchte damit, dass wir ihre Geschichte immer im Kopf behalten. Und
darüber reden. Ich bin 85, ich kann das nicht mehr lange. Aber die Zeitzeugen werden es machen. Und dafür bin ich sehr dankbar.
Yeah, so a little impression of our work. Unfortunately, if I have it on full screen, I can't see you anymore. I wonder if I can change this somehow. Sorry, let me just fix this, or try to fix this first before I continue. Okay. So what you saw in this video is, well, two different types of people, let's put it that way. There are the Holocaust survivors, Peter Finkelgrün and Eva Weil, and there are the ZWEITZEUGEN, so the second witnesses, the young people who spoke about the lives of the Holocaust survivors, and they have heard about their stories before. And where does this idea come from? The idea comes from a quote. It's based on a quote from Elie Wiesel. Elie Wiesel is a Holocaust survivor himself and a Nobel Peace Prize winner. And he once said that anyone who listens to a witness today will become a witness themselves. And yeah, that's what we did. We listened to witnesses. We listened to Holocaust survivors. We also listened to other witnesses of the time period of the Third Reich. So we had some, for example, some people that spoke to us that joined the Wehrmacht back then, but like the big majority of people we spoke to were Holocaust survivors. And yeah, by doing so, with this quote in our head, we became witnesses ourselves. So we became the witnesses of the witnesses, and we decided that we wanted others to become witnesses as well. So we, as second witnesses, carry on the stories of the Holocaust survivors, the time witnesses, so others can become second witnesses as well. That's the idea. We have 37 interviews. Well, overall we have 40 interviews, but like 37 of them are witnesses of the Holocaust in the Third Reich. 3 of them are second generation. And the majority of these people that we interviewed were persecuted as Jews. So we have a focus on the topic of anti-Semitism in that case because of the interviews we had back then. We also have one interview with a Sinto. We have one interview with Zeugen Jehovah, so witnesses of Jehovah. But most of them, the people we interviewed, were Jewish or persecuted as Jews. 37 of them, but we don't only carry on the stories. We have our workshop program and we use didactic methods to add context. So we talk about the historic period itself. We talk about what laws against Jews looked like back then, how they affected the lives of the individual life stories we talked about, we are talking about. We connect the stories to today. We talk about anti-Semitism today, and we always talk about how we can act today to prevent something like the Holocaust from happening again. And we use a didactic approach for that. That's very simple. You can summarize it in 3 words. It's the heart, head, and hand approach. And yeah, like the same experience you maybe had when you first read the Diary of Anne Frank the first time you heard about the Holocaust. it might be a bit easier to understand when you hear a life story than when you talk about the overall period, or you talk about political systems, or something big as that, or even the horrors of the concentration camps. So it might be a bit easier to hear a story first. And we are talking about the life of a person. We don't start with the time between 33 and 45. We talk about their childhood first. So the first thing you will hear when we start with a survivor story is what they were like as a child, what kind of hobbies they had, what kind of personality they maybe had. And I will tell you a little bit about a story later on, so you get an impression of how we do this. And then, as I said, we have the context in the workshops. We add historical contextualization of the Third Reich era and the continuities of anti-Semitism. So it's very, very important for us that it's clear after the workshop that the Nazis did not invent anti-Semitism, and that it did not end after 45, because that might be an impression you could get out of school books if the topic is not dealt with properly. And then, as I said, the hand, we always encourage the students, but even the adults we work with, we encourage them to keep the memory alive, to take this role as a second witness, and to become active today against anti-Semitism and other forms of discrimination. So it doesn't end with 45. It doesn't end after our workshop. We really want our workshop participants, the new second witnesses, as we call them, we would like to get them involved and be an active part of our society. So when you ask us about our mission, it's much bigger than carrying on the survivor stories, even though that is the main part, that is the focus of what we are doing. But our mission is to encourage and empower young people to actively stand up as second witnesses against anti-Semitism and discrimination today. I think I underlined that already. So we want young people to see why the history is important for today, why we should think about it, and why we should act against anti-Semitism, discrimination. That is our mission. I'm just taking a look at the chat, but no, there's no questions. So feel free, if you have any questions, to add them to the chat. Why do we do this? Why do we see this as a bigger challenge? I don't think I have to underline why it's important to work with the topic of the Holocaust and connect it to today's society. Especially you that are here, that are interested in the topic. But I've brought you some numbers from Germany that, to my opinion, underline why it's really, really important what we're doing. About a quarter of the German population, this is all ages, so representative study, says that it's time to draw a line in the Nazi German past. So this is just a topic that's been going on, I guess, since 45, that there is a big part of society that says, well, we've talked about this enough. Why should we still feel guilty about something that is this long ago? We should just stop doing Holocaust education, teach our kids something about it, and maybe see the good times of the German history too. Usually this is used as an excuse from a rather right-wing parties to not talk about anti-Semitism, to not talk about racism, and to just pretend that we don't have a responsibility for today. with this history that we have in Germany. And then we have about 8% of the German population that share a right-wing worldview. That might look like a very low number, even especially when you know how the right-wing party AfD, what numbers they get in the elections these days. I mean, there's about 25% of Germans who would vote for the right-wing AfD party. But this is like a really, let's say, like deep right-wing worldview in this that was found in this study. And part of it is anti-Semitic attitudes. For example, there's an agreement to the statement, even today, the influence of the Jews is still too great. Also, if you add the agreement and the partly answers, about 26%, 27%. Also, so more than every fourth person has this anti-Semitic idea in their heads or would agree to it, or partly agree to it. And we have the relativization of National Socialism. That's also about 20%, that the crimes of National Socialism have been greatly exaggerated in historiography. So, yeah, something that we would like to work against, that we think is really important. So you don't forget the responsibilities we have for today, and that you learn from history in a certain way. And then this is a worldwide problem, I think. We in Germany as well have a huge rise in anti-Semitic crimes since October 7th, 2023. The numbers I brought you now are from last year, so the police have registered more than 3,200 anti-Semitic crimes in Germany, and that's like double the number compared to the year before. And the number of anti-Semitic crimes is still on the rise. So this is a big problem we have. And due to this, we as ZWEITZEUGEN e.V. also decided that it's really, really important to us to focus on, to strongly focus on anti-Semitism as a form of discrimination, as a worldview, to help young people understand the patterns, to recognize anti-Semitism when they see it, and yeah, to actively stand against it. Of course, these numbers, to read them is very, very worrying, frustrating, but I also brought you a, maybe uplifting number. About 3/4 of young people, so this was a sample of an age group between 16 and 25, they are interested in the Nazi era in Germany. So why is that? They associated with acute social problems such as racism and discrimination. So what they do is that they already connect the history to today. And then also, I did not put this on this PowerPoint presentation, but they are quite fascinated with the horrors in a way. So this is also very important to consider when you teach the Holocaust, that there might be some students that are, they seek a certain kind of thrill when they talk about the horrors of the past, especially in a society of perpetrators. Yeah, so we have these two sides. We have on the one hand widespread anti-Semitism. We have historical revisionism in the center of society, so that's very widespread. And then on the other hand, there's great potential to work with the young generation on the topic, because the interest is there and they are already connected to today anyways. Yeah. I brought you a little bit of numbers. We have worked as a volunteer institution for years. And since last year, people came to us. We have received some fundings, which is great, and we were able to reach about 40,000 students since we started working. As Mallory already said, we started at the age of 10, so that's 4th grade in Germany. We have exhibitions. We have about the same amount of visitors there. We've published survivor stories and also collected letters to the survivors or their children that the students write in the workshops sometimes. I'm going to give you a little bit of an insight how these stories work and how we tell them in class. We usually start with some photographs. So this is a photograph of Elisheva Lehmann, and I am a second witness of Elisheva Lehmann. And this is a photo of the interview situation that we had in her home. Those are colleagues of mine. And I'm not on this picture. And I'm still telling her story. And that's quite important for me to say. I did never meet Elisheva, which is really sad. But I'm still the second witness. I was able to read a lot about her. I read her interview. I listened to her interview. I spoke to colleagues that met her. And when I work with students, or I also work with adults quite a lot, then I still tell her story as a second witness. And we usually start with this picture, asking the students or, well, our participants in the workshops what they think this person is like or was like. And usually the pictures we bring, those are people that are quite old, obviously. So the students would usually associate something like, well, she looks like my grandma, she looks very kind, she looks funny, she has a great style, something like that. Which is interesting because sometimes people, well, you can talk about how much you interpret from these pictures as well. But it gives a first idea about this view that we have about just speaking about a person and about their personality when we start with our storytelling. And there's a little bit of German here right now, so don't worry, I'm going to translate. But we have a very plain presentation. We're sitting in the classroom, we bring the presentation, we tell about the story, and we talk about different life stages. So for example, this life stage until 1942, Elisheva lived in the Netherlands, in Scheveningen, and she had a very joyful childhood and youth. And then we talk about why. She loves swimming. She loved swimming. She loved writing. She wanted to become a journalist or writer. And we talk about their families, obviously. So she, this is a picture of her family, and she also lived in one house with her grandparents. She talks about her relationship with her grandmother very much. So we talk a bit about that. And we bring pictures. This is a family pictures. Some of the survivors still have pictures. Obviously, there are some that don't have any. If we have them, we bring them. This is Elisheva here, second to the right, and her brother Bob next to her, and her mother and her father. And then we tell about things that students know. For example, in Elisheva's story, there's one important thing that is happening. She gets to know a person called Bernie, and he is the first love of her life. This is the picture of the two of them. They are both aged 16 in this picture. They do look a bit older, but they are 16 when they met. And when I tell about this story, I tell how she fell in love. And we are using quotes from Elisheva as well. For example, this one. This is in German. Again, I will translate.
Auf einmal spüre ich, dass meine Haare streichelt. Ich gucke ihn an. Und dann springt ein Funk auf. Und dann waren wir ein Paar. Und wir hatten ein halbes Jahr.
Yeah, so we try to add a little bit of her voice as well to our presentation. And here she says that there was a spark when he touched her hair. And then they became a couple, but they only had half a year. And this is when I start talking about Elisheva's time when she was persecuted. Elisheva was Jewish, so was Bernie. And they both had to get into hiding. And as you can see from this timeline, Elisheva was in 13 different hiding places for about 3 years. They were moving from place to place, and they with her family, and she obviously could not have any contact with Bernie, which must have been terrible, especially as a young teenager that is that much in love, on top of being persecuted and having to hide. And what it felt like being in these hiding places was very difficult to describe for Elisheva. She told us about several situations where they almost got caught, and how they hid strategically. And we do this, for example, using some illustrations like these, because of those situations, obviously there are no photographs. And we tell about the stories that she told us about. So, for example, in the last hiding place, there was a wooden floor with wooden planks, and they were living with a family called Family Koistra, and you could lift these wooden planks a little bit, and there was a hiding spot down there for the family of Elisheva if the Nazis came to check on the houses. So Elisheva would tell us every time somebody would knock on the door, they would get into this hiding place. They would use a hammer that was hidden in this stroller. They would hide in there, and then the mother, Koistra, the woman of the house, she would place the stroller on top. And luckily this way, they did not get caught. Yeah, and then we talk about the time after 45. And in this case, Elisheva is waiting for Bernie, so warten auf Bernie, because they had no chance to communicate. They were agreeing on writing diaries for each other, but there was only one diary that managed to get to Elisheva's hiding spot from Bernie once. So she did not know what happened to him. And when they separated from each other, they agreed to meet on a bench in Scheveningen after the war. And that's where Elisheva went when the war was over. She went to that bench and was waiting for Bernie. But he never came. And Elisheva assumed that something terrible must have happened to him. She later found out that he was killed in Auschwitz. Those are parts of the stories we tell. We do not end with the end of the war. And we do not end with this. At this point, we tell more about Elisheva's story. I don't have time for that now. But what we usually do is, telling about, that she met somebody else a year after, that she got married, that she received another diary of Bernie, that she didn't open it for 60 years, that she had a daughter who encouraged her to open the diary very late in her life, and that she, for example, loved playing the piano in the elderly home that she stayed at before she died in 2021. So this is how we work with survivor testimonies. And what I reflect with teachers always is the question, what do you think is important when we work with these Holocaust survivor testimonies? And maybe this is the last question I'm going to ask you. So if you think about working with survivor testimonies, if you have an idea what you think is important, maybe you could share it in the chat as well. I'll take a look and I'll tell you a couple of more sentences what we have an eye on when we do so. So take a second and write something in the chat if you like. Okay, and Ryan already said that it's important to pre-teach the history and humanizing the stories thoroughly. I think it's important to tell their whole story, as you just did, said Amanda. I think in this way it allows the students or person listening to truly connect and realize the victims are more than the Holocaust, they had lives before and after. Yeah, maybe you can take a look at the other answers while they pop in. And I'll tell you a little bit what we focus on. Of course, this is what we're working with, so we put a lot of thought into this. But I brought you 3 points I just wanted to mention. I already said a lot about connecting history to today. So, well, we have the connection of maybe hobbies to the stories we talk about. Maybe there was somebody who also liked to play the piano, just like Elisha did in the classroom. So you already have a connection to that person. But we also do that using methods afterwards and reflections with a student. We always underline our role as second witnesses. So when we come to the classroom, students usually assume that I'm related to Elisha, for example, that I'm her daughter or her granddaughter. And we always point out, no, we're not, and like how our relationship is and where the material comes from. And then we avoid emotional overwhelm. We don't use photographs that are too overwhelming. We don't use photographs of the concentration camps, for example, if we tell about stories that happen in concentration camps, because German studies show that you might react. You might kind of build a wall around yourself because you're overwhelmed so much that you're not open to work with a topic anymore. So we really have this plain presentation that you just saw. If you like to work with the material we have, there obviously is a lot in German. So if you have a German class, we are welcome to use it. But we do have a material in English as well. On our website, you can find an impulse paper with inspiration for international digital projects on the Holocaust. Obviously, focusing on the stories of survivors, because that's our USP, so to say. We have these magazines with the interviews. We do have some in English as well, and we have some ideas for methods how you can build a context for the survivor stories. I'm really, really happy to share the link in the chat. I will do that now. It is based on the Never Forget project that we had last year. That was an international project with the US for the first time in cooperation with the Museum of Jewish Heritage. We brought German students and English students together. So if you like to, US American students together, sorry. So if you like to know more about it, let me know. But yeah, I think now we have some time for Q&A. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or post something in the chat. While you think, I can take a look in the chat already and see what you wrote. But Mallory, yes, please.
Yes. And I can also, if we want to end the recording here, in case people are more comfortable asking questions without the recording going too.
Okay.
Yes. So thank you for everybody coming today. Again, if you have any additional questions, do not hesitate to reach out to us or to reach out to Lena directly. The recording will be available on the website along with the links that Lena sent to their English materials, and the contact information. So thank you again, Lena, for taking your Friday evening with us from Germany.
Thank you for joining.
Appreciate it,
Thank
yeah.
you for the invitation. And yeah, I hope to stay in touch and hear from you. Please reach out to me if you like.
Thank you so much.